good morning. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show, my friends. Yes, you know our mission here. Our mission is to claw through the lies, swat at the propaganda, and expose what the elites never want you to see. Okay, so we are going to be looking at this today. Tylenol, apparently during pregnancy, triples autism risk. And the FDA is finally admitting that. Today we are tackling a story that is very shocking. It is heartbreaking. It's infuriating all at once. And as usual, the mainstream media got it dead wrong. And Trump, yet again, was telling the truth. So we're going to be talking about Tylenol during pregnancy, tripling autism risk. I'm going to walk you through it because there's a lot of information out there. So I want to walk you through the studies, what they actually did. There's experts out there saying, well, it takes years to decades to come to this conclusion. Well, they took decades, actually plenty of studies, and reviewed the studies. So this isn't like a brand new study we're looking at here, okay, that RFK Jr. did when they got into office, when the Trump administration assumed power back in January, okay? So we're going to get to that. Plus, this really makes my blood boil. We don't have Republicans in Illinois. I'm convinced of that. We have Democrats, and they voted for this. Illinois is now turning libraries into drug clinics. Yes, and this is another example, and I've told you guys, I don't know what it is about Illinois, but they love putting kids out there and having kids or college students write legislation for them. It's a disturbing trend. DCFS, there's like a panel of kids that, craft legislation. There's, kids that sit on legislative boards. I mean, this is just getting out of hand. We're letting kids legislate, high school students, college students, and high school students can't even vote. So that's really disturbing. So we're going to get into that. Plus Keith Olbermann. This is wild. And this should be like front page news. He threatened Scott Jennings, but in the most extreme way possible. Like, it wasn't just a jab on social media. This was a direct threat. And now Scott Jennings has passed that on to the FBI. I'm curious if the FBI is going to get involved here. So let's start with the Tylenol thing. Okay. And waking up to this news yesterday, I mean, I knew it was going to happen because Donald Trump had made mention of it at the Charlie Kirk Memorial Service. He said that we are going to have a huge announcement tomorrow. I knew that Tylenol, that they were looking at Tylenol being a link to autism, which is different than the cause of autism. Okay. It is linked to autism. This was really tough for me to hear, being 20 weeks pregnant myself. Try telling a 20 week pregnant woman that she can't use Tylenol anymore. Very upset about it, but I'm more infuriated that I've been told that it's totally fine. And I've been told that from the beginning, and OBs have been told that from the beginning, and doctors, and they keep prescribing it. And when you look at the studies and what Trump exposed here alongside RFK Jr., and Dr. Oz was actually flanking him at this press conference, when you look at it, you're like, wow, I'm glad that they told us when they did. Okay, and didn't let this keep going on. So Trump is essentially flipping off a multi-billion-dollar big pharma company, Tylenol, the people who make Tylenol, and he's advising the American people against using Tylenol during pregnancy when it would normally be used. Now, I don't take a ton of Tylenol, okay? Sometimes I've got crazy headache that just won't go away, and I don't know, I take it like once a week, something like that. I'm not going to be taking it anymore now that I've looked at these studies. And at first, I'm not going to lie. I thought, well, is this Trump just trying to grab headlines? Is this kind of wacky science from RFK Jr.? No. This is legitimate studies that have been, it's not a new study, and I want to make that clear. It is a review of old studies, and we've had the review of these old studies. It's just been very hush-hush, quiet. Don't look at the credible studies that show that Tylenol triples the risk for autism. of the use of Tylenol in pregnancy. So I don't know the last time we had a president who did something like this, where he is flipping off a multi-billion-dollar big pharma company. This is absolutely incredible stuff. Take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say at the presser. There you'll see Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. flanking him. Take a look.
During pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. In other words, a fever that's very, very dangerous, and ideally a doctor's decision, because I think you shouldn't take it. And you shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire. And you shouldn't give the child the Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child. All pregnant women should talk to their doctors for more information about limiting the use of this medication while pregnant. So ideally, you don't take it at all. But if you can't tough it out, or if there's a problem, you're going to end up doing it.
Wow. And believe me, coming from a pregnant woman, this is tough news to hear. Not that I take it all the time, but man, I'm just more pissed that doctors have said that this is so not harmful. And I get the warning labels, but nobody reads the warning labels. Everybody just listens to their doctor. At this point, he kind of alluded to it there. He says giving it to children. And when we review these studies here coming up in just a little bit, we're going to see that there's a lot of factors here. So I want to be very clear. Tylenol causes a risk for autism. It doesn't cause. There's a link to autism, and your risk is higher. It doesn't mean that Tylenol is the cause of autism. There could be multiple factors, and I think that RFK Jr. is probably going to roll this out later in the coming months. Vaccinations. Now, me knowing, you guys know this, newborns, once they're born, there is a whole, 72 dose or 77, I don't know what it's at now, dose vaccine recommendation. Okay, they want the kids to take 77 doses of crap, okay, of vaccines. Some of them good, some of them maybe not so good. Okay, and then you pair that with, so in utero, the baby in the pregnancy through the umbilical cord gets the Tylenol from mom, okay, is born, then gets all kinds of vaccines, and then is prescribed Tylenol like candy. My mom, she's fostering a cute little baby right now. He's so precious. The pediatrician says Tylenol, 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 Tylenol for everything, okay? So they prescribe it like candy. So that could be, all of it coupled together could really increase your risks to contracting autism or being at risk for autism. So this guy, Donald Trump, is governing like he's been shot, like he's been indicted, and like he's been impeached, and he gives zero craps. He gives zero craps. He's got no more craps to give. Okay, so he is doing exactly what he promised and exactly what we voted for, and I'm here for it. Now, I want you to remember something. Not that long ago, a few weeks ago, Donald Trump had made this remark, or RFK Jr., I believe, made the remark that pregnancy taking acetaminophen could be linked to autism. And the media did what they always do. They laughed, they rolled their eyes. I was skeptical, I won't lie. Now, with this announcement, they actually rolled out what they looked at, and I am not skeptical anymore. But they used, they did their usual thing, their cocktail of smirks, their insults, their mockery, and they told America that this was just Trump being Trump. He's just a crazy guy. He's just doing headline grabbing. RFK Jr. It's all quack science, and it's totally unserious. This Tylenol thing, and this was just a few weeks ago. And they said that RFK Jr. is out of touch with the science. But now, I think the media is going to have to really swallow. This is going to be a tough pill for them to swallow, because now we have Harvard, John Hopkins saying that Donald Trump is right. Okay, Columbia and Mount Sinai, they also say he's right. The FDA saying he's correct. The FDA itself, they're finally admitting under the Trump administration that the data is too strong to ignore. Think about that. All these smug reporters for the last, I don't know, month or so since this kind of was whispered, they were so adamant that this was quack science. But now they're realizing, oh man, Donald Trump is kind of right here. And you've got all these experts from Harvard and Johns Hopkins also um, coming on board. Now, at the time, you had other experts, coming on their shows and saying that Donald Trump and RFK Jr., they're ignoring the science and that they're participating in quack science. Now it's inevitably has to be reversed. You've got the experts now saying and siding with the Trump administration. The science is devastating. Secretary Kennedy, he revealed that Tylenol use contributes to also ADHD in liver toxicity. How long have we known about the truth? This is what really grinds my gears about this, and I start to grit my teeth a little bit, because how long have we known this? And we've got all the studies, and this wasn't a new study that RFK Jr. came out with. This was a review of credible studies. We have to hold these people accountable. I'm going to share with you RFK Jr.'s comments now. Here we go. And I promise we're going to get to what the studies actually say, the numbers, if you're interested. So stick around for that. Take a listen to RFK Jr. first, though.
Important findings from our autism work that are vital for parents to know as they make these decisions. First, HHS will act on acetaminophen. The FDA is responding to clinical and laboratory studies that suggest a potential association between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes, including later diagnosis for ADHD and autism. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal acetaminophen exposure to altered brain development. We have also evaluated the contrary studies that show no association. Today, the FDA will issue a physician's notice about the risk of acetaminophen during pregnancy and begin the process to initiate a safety label change. HHS will launch a nationwide public service campaign to inform families and protect public health. FDA also recognized that acetaminophen is often the only tool for fevers and pain in pregnancy, as other alternatives have well-documented adverse effects. HHS wants, therefore, to encourage clinicians to exercise their best judgment in the use of acetaminophen for fevers and pain in pregnancy by prescribing the lowest effective dose for the shortest necessary duration and only when treatment is required. Furthermore, thanks to the politicization of science, the safety of acetaminophen against the risk of neurodevelopmental disorders in young children has never been validated. Prudent medicine, therefore, suggests caution in acetaminophen use by young children, especially since strong evidence also has associated it with liver toxicity. Some studies have also found the use of acetaminophen in children can potentially prolong viral illnesses. FDA will drive new research to safeguard mothers, children, and families. In addition to a possible acetaminophen connection to autism for pregnant women, infants and toddlers, our research has revealed that folate deficiency in a child's brain can lead to autism.
Okay. So, again, Tylenol, acetaminophen, it's a link here. I think that you're right on, David Yeats. The heavy metals have nothing to do with it. I call BS. Yeah. So, like I said, it probably is a whole, and I think RFK Jr. alluded to this in the press conference, that they're looking at the vaccinations as well being a cause or a link to, but it's coupled with the Tylenol use. And then you get the heavy metals in your food. I'm sure all of it contributes to autism in some sort of way. And I hate to play devil's advocate here, but Tylenol does have, the big pharma company on their label does have a recommended dosage in a day. It also recommends that you seek a professional opinion before taking it while you're pregnant. It has stuff on the label about liver damage. But here's where it becomes a problem, Tylenol, and what we know now. Pediatricians out of utero, okay, when the children are born, and then they get their 77 vaccines and the heavy metals from the vaccines, and then their continued use of Tylenol out of utero. That's where I think it starts to become a problem, I would imagine. And I'm sure in the coming months, RFK Jr. is going to reveal some of that to us. But OBs and pediatricians, they've recommended this stuff, and they didn't warn you about it. Might be on the label, the liver damage, and this might not be surprising to some of you. Lisa says, no big surprise at all about Tylenol. It might not be surprising to some of you, but really, the doctors are prescribing it like candy, taking the recommended daily dose every day for umpteen years may really screw you up. And then, not to mention, he also talked about a folate deficiency. So, say women aren't taking their prenatals, but they are taking Tylenol every day. That could increase your risk for autism or for the children to contract autism. So, Harvard School of Public Health studied acetaminophen. Okay, this is where I get into the nitty gritties of these studies and provide you the receipts, because that's what we do here on the show. So they studied acetaminophen, the generic name for Tylenol. Okay, we widely know it as Tylenol, acetaminophen. They looked at the data from over hundreds of thousands of participants. Okay, what did they find? Prenatal exposure significantly increases the risk of both autism and ADHD. Johns Hopkins took it even further. They actually analyzed the baby's umbilical cord, okay, the blood in the umbilical cord. And the results, the baby with the highest levels of acetaminophen were 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with autism. Not 1.5 times more likely, not twice, 3 times more likely. That's not a rounding error. That is a flashing red siren, and it should completely make your jaw drop. So now Mount Sinai researchers said the connection was strong enough that pregnant women deserve real warnings, not fake reassurances from big pharma pamphlets. And that's what is so the lies and the propaganda. Okay, it might not be as intense as we all think it is. If you are keeping up with your prenatals, your folate, and you don't have a folate deficiency, if you're not vaccinating your kids with 80 doses of whatever the hell, and then continuing prolonged Tylenol use out of utero or out of the uterus, you might be good. Okay, if you use Tylenol sparingly, like most pregnant women do. I don't think most pregnant women are taking Tylenol every single day, but it's the fake reassurances that really piss me off here, and it's the propaganda. Columbia researchers agreed, noting that better quality studies consistently show the link. So that is huge, and I'm going to break this language down because the media is going to thrive on your confusion. Just because a risk is proven doesn't mean it's guaranteed. So smoking is linked to lung cancer. Okay, but not everyone who smokes gets lung cancer, and that doesn't mean the link doesn't exist, though. Okay, the risk is real when you smoke. your risk is higher. Okay. The same is true for Tylenol. Not every mother who takes Tylenol is going to have a child with autism. I want to be very clear about that. And they were pretty clear about this in the press conference, but you know what the media is going to run with? They're going to say that Trump is saying that Tylenol causes autism. He's not saying that. He's saying that it's linked to autism. And there's probably a whole host of factors. We've talked about a few: vaccines, prolonged Tylenol use in children, folate deficiency. There's probably all kinds of factors that go into this as well, but just generally, your risk for autism goes up if you have Tylenol in utero. Okay. But the evidence says that the risk skyrockets here 3 times more likely. Okay. According to the blood that it was analyzed in the umbilical cord. Who did that? John Hopkins. They did this. That is a huge amounting. This is huge evidence. Okay. And mothers were never told. You're handed a pamphlet, believe me, handed a pamphlet, and you're told it's totally fine. It's like nothing, don't worry about it. I will say my doctor, I tell her that I take Tylenol sometimes, and she says, please stay away from that, as much as you can. Okay. So for decades, Tylenol has been marketed as the safest choice, which is not true now. For pregnant women, and doctors have told women, don't touch Advil or ibuprofen. Okay, Tylenol is your safest option. I'm not saying Advil or ibuprofen is the safest option. Okay, I'm not a doctor, but we now know that Tylenol is not the safest option. They talked about it there in the press conference that there are other pain remedies that you can use, and that the doctor should be transparent in telling their patients that, and not just recommending Tylenol. Okay. We were told this over and over and over, that Tylenol is the safest option for pregnant women. But today, after years of denial, the science is too strong to ignore. Labels are changing. Doctor alerts are coming out quietly, slowly, and reluctantly, but it is happening, and it's all because of President Donald Trump. And this is where my blood really starts to boil. How many children, how many families, how many of these kids had to pay the price while the government and the media and the big pharma people, they all kept their mouths shut about this. And here's another angle that the left doesn't want to touch. And we've got the numbers out on this. Democrats, they love to cry about systemic racism. You know that. Systemic racism. They like to cry about lead paint, being in the hood, and some of these houses still using or still having lead paint and yada yada. They scream about how tobacco ads were targeted in Black neighborhoods. There were more tobacco ads on billboards in Black neighborhoods, and they'd scream about that. They'd lecture you about housing and about redlining and yada 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 and everything else. But when it comes to Tylenol, when it comes to the fact that Black mothers and their babies were disproportionately exposed to Tylenol, okay, those communities of color, they were used as guinea pigs. They really were. They were disproportionately exposed to Tylenol, okay, and silence, utter silence from the left. They're not upset that Big Pharma, once again, which bankrolls the Democrat Party, period, end of story. Black mothers and children, they were sacrificed once again for corporate profit and political power. That's not healthcare, that's exploitation. Okay, utter silence. And it's because Big Pharma bankrolls the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party wants the Black community oppressed and docile, and to have them keep voting for them. And to exploit the Black community and these Black mothers and children. They were sacrificed once again for corporate profit and Democrat political power. We know Big Pharma bankrolls the Democrat Party. So listen, I can already hear the pushback. People are going to say, well, I took Tylenol while I was pregnant and my kids are fine. Well, there might not be a ton of, did you give all of your, or did you give the child all of his childhood vaccines, and did you continue prolonged use of Tylenol? Did you have a folate deficiency or did you not? Or you're going to hear, I never took Tylenol and my kid still has autism. You're going to hear that. That is all true. That's kind of how risk works. Okay, think about it. Not every smoker dies of lung cancer. Okay, but enough do where we call smoking dangerous and smoking a risk for lung cancer. Okay, the same logic applies here. Tylenol is linked to autism. Doesn't mean that it's the only cause to autism, and it doesn't mean that it's a guaranteed cause. It's just a powerful factor. Okay, so I'm sure people are going to be upset by the warning labels like they were with the alcohol and cigarettes. Okay, alcohol and cigarettes, they were required to put warning labels on, and people were upset, but they're going to get over their tantrums. Okay, Dr. Oz, this is him on Trump's Tylenol move here on the during the presser, or he was on with Laura Ingraham afterwards. He was there with Trump at the presser. He says, quote, historic. A passionate president said, enough is enough. Autism devastates families, and he's refused to wait another day to act for mothers and children. So this is huge stuff here. Let's take a listen to Dr. Oz and what he has to say. Here we go.
The other one that he mentioned were both reviewed in this analysis by Harvard, and the dean of the School of Public Health there actually sent a statement that we were able to use at the press conference today. And again, he looked at everything. And I'll give you two highlights. The first is that he stands by the data that they've analyzed. It's high quality, academic, no vested interest. None of these, paired sibling studies. There are a few dozen people trying to analyze. That's very difficult. The other thing he said was that he actually would be, he would consider this importantly when he was trying to give advice to a mother or to a child that he was related to. So I think if you take a step back, the real historic reality of today was a very passionate president said enough is enough. We have gaslit women too long. There are problems with autism in this country. It's not just a measuring issue. And so he demanded that we break down the silos between me at CMS, Marty at FDA, Jay Bhattacharya at NIH, and Secretary Kennedy, also undaunted, will not be stopped. I don't care what. There's no political benefit of today.
No, this is not. This doesn't help anyone. Yeah, like if it's not true, it doesn't help. It makes everybody look
You're
bad.
losing
So
donation.
why would you do it? That's my point.
So for that all to happen, and for us to this kind of alacrity bring to the forefront something that was known of last year, a prior administration could have taken steps. This most recent paper came out at the end of August, but the data was based on years of work. We have to take autism and their mothers of these children seriously. It destroys families at times, and we can't afford to have any more children without. President didn't want to wait another day. He demanded it.
There you have it. So this was known. I mean, that's one thing that I really want to make clear, that this was known. And friends, this is where it gets really dark. And people are going to say, oh, Dr. Oz is just trying to sell his supplements. Well, sometimes supplements are an answer. Okay. And they don't have the effects that maybe Tylenol has. Okay. So what? I'd say, yeah, maybe supplements are a better alternative. But here's where it gets really dark, folks. The lawsuits. And this has been going on for years. I mean, I'd say for 14 years, we've kind of known that Tylenol does this. What is really unfortunate is that you've had doctors in the medical community shoving this down way down deep. So families have tried to sue Johnson & Johnson over Tylenol's role in autism cases. They have. But the judges have dismissed hundreds of lawsuits. Why? Because those experts cherry-picked the data. And now Donald Trump has come in, RFK Jr., and they're not cherry-picking anymore. And that's really what this is. So here it is, 27 studies, and these are robust studies, 27 of them, showed an association between Tylenol and autism, okay? 13 didn't. Now, what they did, they cherry-picked, and they chose the 13 to talk about people in the medical community, and this is their justification for doctors, recommending Tylenol like it's candy. They used the 13 studies. Now, I'm sorry, but 27 over 13, that's, come on, that's overwhelming evidence. Okay, and Harvard's own Dean of Public Health says that the relationship is causal, not correlative. Okay, so that should be the end of the debate right there. You've got Harvard, Johns Hopkins. I mean, people have known about this for quite some time. But the judges sided, of course, with the corporations, with Johnson & Johnson, and politicians continue to take donations. The media keeps telling you the science is inconclusive. Although we have 27 credible studies that say that there is an association, then you have 13 studies which weren't as robust, by the way. The 27 ones were robust. The most robust studies showed an association. The non-robust ones, and there was less of them, 13, showed that there wasn't an association. Okay, so it's a rigged game. And who loses? Mothers, children, families. Now let's talk about Chris Cuomo, because this is almost too perfect. Chris Cuomo, he went on air and he claimed that Harvard's review was a split decision. Okay, a split decision? No, and I'm talking about a Harvard's review here. They reviewed these 27 studies and 13 studies. This wasn't a split decision. That's kind of like saying that it's a tied game. The football game's tied 27-13. That's total and utter nonsense. Now, this Dr. Marty McCary, bless him, he wasn't having it with Chris Cuomo. And he said point blank, higher quality studies, robust studies favor an association. And then he quoted the dean of Harvard School of Public Health. There is a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen and autism and ADHD. That is not a split decision. It's a complete knockout. Let's take a listen to, I mean, the media at this point, they are so shameless. They will do anything it takes to shill for Big Pharma and for the Democrat Party, i.e. Big Pharma bankrolls the Democrat Party. They will do anything for these people. And he just gets caught with his foot in his mouth here. Take a listen.
So Harvard does a review of previous studies. And they came up with what I would term as a layman, right, because I'm not a clinician, as a split decision in favor of studies that found that Tylenol may have an association with negative effects, including potential forms of autism.
This research is not a split decision, as you described. 27 studies found an association between prenatal use of acetaminophen and autism. And there were 13 studies that went the other way, but the authors concluded that the higher quality studies favored an association. And if I can just quote the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health, my former institution, quote unquote, there is a causal relationship between prenatal acetaminophen and the neurodegenerative disorders of ADHD and autism spectrum disorder.
I love how Cuomo says, yeah, 27-13. Oh yeah. That's a, I was right. Split decision. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Oh, sorry folks. I don't know why I am not. There we go. Okay. Oh, my little box. Come on. Okay. I'm like in the little corner over here and then, okay. So yeah, I mean, here's what should scare you. Big Pharma and its media mouthpieces like Chris Cuomo still trying to bury the truth about Tylenol, and they've been burying the truth for decades. If that's going on, what else are they burying? That's what I'm concerned about. I mean, now we know this. Thank you, President Donald Trump, for exposing this. What else are they burying? Probably opioids. We saw it with opioids already, that they were prescribing things like morphine, fentanyl in the hospitals. And when people leave the hospitals after treatment, they wind up really addicted, okay, because they're giving them way too much opioids for pain management in these hospitals. We already know that. We saw what they buried as far as the COVID vaccines, the myocarditis in young men. We saw the antidepressants, they pushed it on children, the effects antidepressants have on children. They buried that over and over. The pattern repeats. Profits first, truth later. Okay. And when the truth finally surfaces, it's almost too late for families. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I've got doctors telling me, oh yeah, take a little bit of Tylenol. It's okay. 20 weeks pregnant. I feel lied to. I feel angry. I'm infuriated. and it's too late, you know? So where do we stand today? The science is undeniable. You're going to hear a lot of people in the media, and just remember they are mouthpieces for Big Pharma, i.e. the Democrat Party. Big Pharma bankrolls the Democrat Party. The science is undeniable. The risk is real. And yet, how many babies were exposed in the meantime? You know, when we knew that the science was undeniable for probably about a decade at this point, we knew that the risk was real. And how many babies were exposed, and how many families are waking up blindsided this morning with this news? How many children are struggling with conditions that might have been preventable? Not saying it causes, like, again, I want to reiterate, this is a link. It could be a whole host of factors. The fact that the mother is folate deficient, the vaccines, the children who get the vaccines, if they are exposed to Tylenol in utero, then they get a whole host of vaccines, like 80 vaccines, the heavy metals, the mercury, and vaccinations. They get those, and then they continued their prolonged Tylenol use because pediatricians recommend that stuff like it's candy. Okay. Oh, children has the sniffles, Tylenol. Everything Tylenol. So, but I think that there might be children out there, and we know that there's been lawsuits that have been completely dismissed by judges. There might be children out there where this was totally preventable. And, you know, if someone about a year ago, as you heard Dr. Oz, we knew this stuff a year ago, and the Biden administration did nothing. If someone had just told the truth. So that's the generational cost of big pharma lies. Okay, that's the tragedy of media arrogance and ignorance. And this is why the story matters so much, because this came at a cost, a real cost. Friends, let me end with this. Every time Trump speaks a hard truth, and we've seen it, the media is the first to instinctively, they like mock President Donald Trump. Okay, they mocked him on Russia. He was right about Russia, the Russia collusion hoax. Okay, they mocked him about Hunter Biden laptop story. He was right about that. The Hunter Biden laptop being real. He was right about the lab leak. Okay, and now he's right about Tylenol. And the truth has claws. And no matter how deep they try to bury it, the truth always finds a way to scratch itself up to the surface. And don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them tell you, oh, that this is another Trump headline. He's just being Trump. This is Trump being Trump. Don't let them gaslight you, because behind the headlines, behind the mockery, there are real families who suffered. And finally, the truth is clawing its way out. I do want to get to this. This is shocking stuff. I'm going to take a quick break. Illinois' latest, brightest idea. They are forcing public libraries to stock up on opioid overdose drugs. So things like Narcan. And what's even more outrageous is that this kind of came from a high schooler, or it came from policymakers who allowed high schoolers to have a say in policy making. So what do I mean by this is a bill that was inspired by a high school student, and policymakers hand in hand with a high school student crafted this bill. High school students cannot vote. And I'm going to get to this because this is shocking stuff. Libraries, I thought they were a place for books, for learning. And now they are trying to shift them into drug clinics. And even further, there's been a bill that's been introduced. It's not law yet, but they want to shift libraries into mental health facilities, state-run mental health facilities. So we're going to chat about that here next. Don't miss it. This is explosive. I'll be right back. Hey, you're listening to the Conservative Cat Clips. This is the place where we don't call 911 first. Nope, we pray, we prepare, and yes, we pack heat. Every time there's a tragedy, the media and the Democrats, they start crying, do something, and do something. And what they mean is more laws, more bans, and more restrictions, not on criminals, mind you, but on law-abiding citizens. So let me tell you what evil doesn't care about. They don't care about legislation. The man willing to break the sixth commandment, thou shalt not murder, doesn't blink twice at your AR-15 ban. Okay, he doesn't read your gun-free zone signs. He sees those signs and he says, this is an invitation for me. Gun control doesn't stop evil. It disarms good people. The founding fathers didn't give us the Second Amendment so we could go hunting. They gave us the Second Amendment to protect ourselves against tyrants, both foreign and domestic. And newsflash, tyrants don't tend to announce themselves. They come wearing smiles and waving around fancy policies. And I also want to talk about self-defense today. Self-defense. The average police response time in big cities like Chicago could be up to 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. I know the Chicago PD is really struggling with that. Response times in rural areas, it could get up to even 30 minutes response time. So if somebody kicks down your door, are you going to ask them to wait until the government sends backup to protect you, or are you going to protect your family and take matters into your own hands? So grandma, okay, in Peoria, Illinois, she is just trying to defend her property, but yet she's the one treated like a criminal. She has to go through all kinds of crazy background checks, permits, training. And the thug in Chicago, he gets the gun out of his trunk in an alley, and he didn't think twice about our laws, okay? It's about power. It always has been. Every dictatorship in history has disarmed their citizens first. First, that's Stalin, that's Hitler, that's Mao. They didn't want competition. And once the guns were gone, so were the rights, the freedom, and the people. So a disarmed people is a controlled people. But an armed, faithful, and free people, that is a nightmare for tyrants. And really, it's a blessing to your neighbors if you are armed. The Second Amendment isn't outdated. It's eternal. And just like evil, just like our right, just like the evil has the right to do evil things, and that they will, we have the right to resist evil and to arm ourselves. And the Second Amendment is pretty dang clear, shall not be infringed. This has been Conservative Cat Clips. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to share this out with a friend today. This is an explosive story. Today we are diving into Illinois' latest bright idea, forcing every public library to stock up on opioid overdose drugs. So that's naloxone, or better known as Narcan. This is a nasal spray that can wake somebody up from an overdose. Very dangerous stuff. I get that people know how to administer Narcan and it's pretty easy to train somebody, but when you're dealing with somebody who's coming out of an overdose situation, if you administer too much Narcan, which is possible, that person can become violent if they wake up in a environment that is a little chaotic. Say a screaming child in a library, it happens. They could become violent or outraged. This is a very terrible bill. And like most bills I talk about, all of your Republican lawmakers voted for it. Every single one of them. Every single Democrat voted for it. And I'm just not happy. I'm just not happy. This is outrageous. And even more, I couldn't imagine being a lawmaker, having my voting, they got little buttons up there, having the voting power, and then listening to a lawmaker, a policy maker, the bill sponsor, get up there and talk about how this was inspired by a high school student. Okay, number one, anything inspired by a high school student, I am voting down. You want to know why? Because high school students can't vote. Okay, and not that I hate high schoolers, love kids. Okay, but they shouldn't be making policy. There, I said it. So libraries used to be a place for books, for learning, but they've turned into makeshift drug clinics. And now they're even talking about shifting. Okay. I don't know. Hello? Okay. Yeah, it was bizarre. I hope that I'm back. Throw it in the comment section. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. I think I had some technical issues there for a second. Throw it in the comment section. Let me know. There used to be a place for books. Now they're drug clinics. And the masterminds behind this legislation, that really it mandates that all libraries carry Narcan, and it also mandates that somebody on the library staff has to be working who can administer this Narcan, okay, and is trained in administering Narcan. It's very easy. I know how to administer Narcan. I've been trained in it. It's very easy, but it's potentially dangerous, okay? And I never want to be in a situation where I have to administer Narcan to somebody, like actually, because there's a lot of things to remember. And I am not a mental health professional or a medical professional. Okay. If I administer too much by accident in a high stress situation, that individual is waking up violent. Okay. So progressive legislators, they're the masterminds behind this. And then they teamed up with a high school senior who does volunteer work, which is very admirable. I'm not saying that. She does volunteer work with those who are struggling with addiction. Look, folks, this is unserious government. Okay. In a very serious time. The opioid epidemic, okay, that we're facing here, specifically in Illinois. I feel like it's so much worse here as far as opioids go. I'm sure that you know someone personally, or you know someone personally who knows somebody personally who has to deal with overdose or with addiction in some sort of way, opioid addiction. So here's what Illinois just passed. Starting next year, every public library in the state, they have to stock up on naloxone. And like I said, this is a nasal spray. And this is a drug designed to reverse opioid overdoses. Okay. Not only that, but they have to also have one staff member on duty trained to administer it. Okay. On the surface, supporters say that this is all about saving lives. Republicans, everybody voted for this. There was not one no vote. Shocking stuff. For the sole reason, I would vote no for the sole reason that a high schooler inspired this legislation. That alone would give me enough of a green light saying, okay, this is not a good bill. Okay. And you dig a little bit deeper into this and you really start to think about the fundamental, the foundation here. They are really trying to redefine what libraries are. And libraries, they used to be about books, research, quiet study, learning, resources, things like that for the community. Not anymore. Now they're going to be expected to double as emergency medical wards. And it's all funded, of course, by your money, funded and encouraged by progressive bureaucrats and grant money flowing from Washington, D.C., from the state, taxpayer dollars. By the way, this is all your money. All of it's funded by your money. So the naloxone, that costs something. Narcan is probably going to be the brand of choice. And they're going to make even more money than they already make because of the taxpayer money, the government money being used to buy these contracts, and then they're going to stock up the naloxone in the public library shelves. Okay, so let's talk about what's really happening here. Okay, this is normalizing drug culture. Okay, progressives are determined to move America away from a culture of responsibility. When I was in school, there was DARE, don't do drugs. Okay. Maybe you grew up in the 80s. There was the Just Say No campaign. Okay. We are moving from a culture of responsibility to a culture of dependency. Instead of just say no, it's just carry Narcan. That is where progressives want to lead us. And instead of teaching our young people through programs like DARE, which don't exist anymore, instead of teaching them not to destroy their lives with opioids or drugs at all. My DARE program, they said no to marijuana, no to alcohol. This was in our schools. We don't have those anymore. Instead of teaching young people not to destroy their lives with drugs, we're teaching them, don't worry, the state is there and they're going to clean up your mess. And the local library has got you covered. That is the cultural shift we're seeing. And that's not compassion, that's enabling. And when the government starts enabling destructive behavior, it isn't saving lives. It's setting the stage for more addiction, more overdoses, and more tragedy. Libraries are becoming a symbol of this cultural shift. And really what's going on here, and I alluded to it earlier, they've also introduced, Democrats, a bill to allow local libraries to become mental health facilities, social services, and provide mental health counseling. This is creepy. This means that the state is going to be experimenting with state-run, mental health facilities. And I'm all for bringing mental health facilities back, but they're doing this under the guise of like, oh, well, there are community centers. We need actual mental health professionals in these places then. Okay. If we're going to open up mental institutions, I'm all for that. They shouldn't be run by librarians, progressive, liberal librarians, who don't know a thing about social work or psychology. Okay. So, libraries, what once used to be represented as discipline and learning, they're now twisting it into places that quietly signal like, hey, we expect overdoses here. And like, this is just so out of the scope, in my opinion. Okay, so here is the part that should outrage every single parent and taxpayer listening. If you're listening to me, this law wasn't championed by really a far left legislator. It was inspired by a high school student. Okay, you heard me right. Okay, and this is a teenager who hasn't lived life. Okay, I've seen overdose. I've seen addiction. Being 20, a lot can happen from years 18 to 25. Okay, a lot can happen, and you can live a lot of experience in that time period as an adult. And this teenager hasn't had any real exposure to this issue. Now, she might have exposure to it. She says she volunteers around it, and that's all admirable, but she doesn't have enough experience in real life, in the real world, to be crafting legislation and helping Illinois write law. Okay. And I'm not attacking the kid. I'm not attacking high school students. They can be very quick and very smart and quippy and, witty. I'm sure she meant well, and I admire her and applaud her for her work in the addiction community. Okay, or those who struggle with addiction. Okay, so I get that, but since when do we hand students who can't vote, by the way, the keys of policy making? We don't hand them the keys of policy making. Okay, when I was in high school, my biggest responsibility was finishing my homework, getting to practice on time. That's it. Today, progressive lawmakers, what they do, you see, they parade these teenagers into the spotlight using their stories as political cover to push a radical idea. So that's just what the left does. They'll use these emotional stories and emotional antidotes, emotional stories instead of real data. So they'll say, look at this passionate young person who volunteers in these addiction-riddled communities. How dare you oppose her vision for change? Okay, but policy isn't about feelings. Okay, it's about wisdom, history, and consequences. And whether, taxpayers, this should come to a vote. Do you want your public library to shift and not be a library anymore? Do you want them to be a drug clinic where they administer things like Narcan, possibly methadone? Or do you want that to be a public library? And that should come to a vote locally. You as a local resident should get to decide what is done with your public library. Why? Because you pay a lot of money for it and you're expecting it to be a library. Okay, but they're trying to shift it away from its design without informing anybody, and they're trying to do it as quietly as possible. Okay, like I said, there's a bill introduced that would shift libraries and make them mental institutions or mental health care facilities, which would be like social work, I'd imagine, or some sort of therapy. High schoolers, they don't have the experience to weigh all of what needs to be weighed when crafting policy. They need wisdom, they need history, and they need to see the consequences of their actions. And they haven't been able to do that because they're too young. Yet here we are, Illinois policy again being shaped by a teenager. And I bring you back to, I've talked about this before, DCFS. They had this hair care bill where it was crafted by a panel of young students. There's a board within the Department of Health Services, the IDHS, under the DCFS, and under DCFS, there's this panel of kids that have grown up in the system. Okay. And they came up with this bill that said, oh, foster parents need to provide hair care to the children. Now, that could go as far as, say the kid wants to dye their hair orange. Well, the foster parents have to do that on their dime, right? And i.e. your dime, because you are paying these foster parents through your taxpayer dollars, okay? Through stipends that they get. So that was the bill that they crafted, that little panel of children who grew up in the fosters. I am not about Illinois law being shaped by kids. I hate that. Why the hell are we doing that? And, this isn't the first time libraries have drifted away from their mission. They have pointed out, critics have pointed out that libraries are constantly looking for relevance. And I've talked about this before, that public transit and public libraries, they are constantly looking for relevance. They're trying to justify their existence in an era where information is at our fingertips, and in an era, public transit not being used nearly as much, especially after COVID, because of rideshare. People started Ubering and things like that because, you could make a ton of money during COVID, and it never really tapered off. Ride sharing, like public transit, is largely becoming irrelevant. So are public libraries, because information is at our fingertips. We've got these little things called cell phones, okay? Smartphones. So there has been a push to make libraries, and this hasn't been passed yet, mental health centers. They're calling them community clinics, and they're calling them overdose response hubs. Okay, so they're quietly changing the mission of libraries. And here's a radical thought. I'm just going to throw this out there. You let me know what you think. Maybe libraries should stick to their core mission: educating, informing, preserving the culture, preserving history. If they want to become medical clinics, fine. But that's going to come up to a vote. And we got to stop calling them libraries. And we've got to start calling them mental health facilities. We've got to start calling them social services for addiction. We've got to start calling them those things. And then we have to get all those librarians out of there, fire them, get rid of them, and then replace them with trained professionals. And we have to stop robbing taxpayers under the guise of literature while actually running these public health experiments. And, of course, defenders of this law, they're going to point out that the naloxone is free of charge. Well, nothing is ever free, okay? Nothing in government is free. They say, oh, the naloxone is free of charge. We're going to provide these libraries the naloxone for free. The naloxone kits and the training programs, it's all funded by grants. Okay, so people are getting paid to go out there and train. People are paying for, or taxpayers are paying for the naloxone to be stocked in these libraries. It all comes from you, your tax dollars. And while today the taxpayer dollars might be flowing, tomorrow they might not be, because President Donald Trump, the White House, they've already proposed cuts to these types of programs. Illinois, you can get naloxone free anywhere, really, like your public health center or your, health departments. You can get naloxone. That's like a law. And that might be all fine and dandy now, but the White House is talking about cutting all of that. And when the funding dries up at a federal level, the local taxpayers will be forced to pick up the tab. Okay. And what is relatively cheap, unless you live in Bloomington, Illinois, because they just spent $25 million on a public library to enhance it and to renovate it and whatnot. Unless you live in Bloomington, Illinois, relatively, I'd say public libraries are pretty cheap to maintain. Okay, they're not the greatest expense locally. Your schools are the greatest expense, but locally, I'd say your public libraries are relatively cheap to maintain and preserve, and for the functions that they're supposed to perform, which is provide internet and some resources, books, and things like that. It's pretty cheap comparatively to some other things that might take like your sewer system, your water system. That's a lot more expensive. Your roads. Now, if we are running full-blown mental health facilities or mental health centers or full-blown drug clinics where we have to pay, professionals, that's going to be very expensive. Okay, so who's going to pick up the tab for that? You. The answer is always you. So we can't ignore the risks either. I've talked about this. I actually know somebody who's administered Narcan in real life, like in a real life situation, okay, and not a training situation. I know how to administer it. I actually know of somebody who has administered Narcan, and it was very scary. I'm back, I think. Throw it in the comment section. This is annoying. Hello? Can you hear me? Throw it in the comment section if you can hear me and see me. I don't know. I'm having some technical difficulties this morning. So, yes, I know somebody who administered Narcan, and actually in that situation, they administered too much too quickly, and it actually caused a violent reaction. Let me know in the comment section if you guys can hear me, see me. I'm having some weird technical difficulties this morning. I don't know what's going on. Maybe they're canceling me because I'm talking about healthcare related stuff. They don't like that. You mentioned COVID. You mentioned the opioid crisis. You mentioned actually fixing the opioid crisis. They don't like that. Okay, so yeah, I know somebody who administered Narcan. They told me later that it was really scary because the person woke up and they acted very violently, started punching things because they administered too much too quickly. So imagine a librarian. Okay. A lot of times these librarians are also old ladies. Okay. I hate to say that, but it's true. Okay. They're older women and they're really trained in story time and book sorting. Okay. And not to disparage, I wanted to be a librarian when I grew up, or I wanted to go into that profession. I didn't wind up doing that. But it's a very admirable position, largely irrelevant, sadly, because of the rise of technology, but whatever. So this old woman is expected all of a sudden to handle a violent, potentially grown man, an aggressive overdose patient. Not safe. Are they going to provide the library with restraints? Are they going to provide the librarians with a gurney? What the hell are we doing here? It's not fair to the librarians. It's definitely not fair to the families who go into a library expecting to bring their kids in for a Saturday morning reading, and then all of a sudden there's somebody in the corner getting an Narcan. Like, what the hell are we talking about here? And Republicans voted for it, all of them. So I don't know. I mean, we're told that they're not going to say any kind of liability, these librarians, under the Good Samaritan Act, which is good, at least that they won't get sued, if somebody who's an overdose patient in this library gets an Narcan and then punches a baby in the face who's, just trying to listen to story hour or to this reading hour. The state is asking librarians to do to participate or to do emergency medical intervention, and we're not going to hold anybody accountable for things if things go and hit the fan. Okay. So once again, I can't say this enough. These workers probably didn't sign up to play paramedic. They probably signed up to, I don't know, sort books. Okay. At the heart of the issue, America is abandoning this culture of responsibility. Like I said, we are teaching kids that it's okay to destroy your bodies with drugs because we will hand you the safety net of naloxone later. Instead, of demanding libraries focus on education. Perhaps they should be hosting DARE programs or programs that teach kids just say no. We have transformed them into makeshift ER rooms, and we are. We need to insist our lawmakers use judgment and use wisdom and use experience, and not hand the keys over to a high school student. What's wrong with Republicans? I still can't believe this. And I'm talking all Republicans. Okay, so this is just a flat out rejection of common sense. It is collapse of standards. It's not compassionate to enable bad decisions. It's not progress to let libraries become overdose shelters. It's not leadership to hand the policy-making pen over to a teenager. It's not. This is bad. So this is going to spread as well. So I think that New York already does this. I think they did it like way back in 2018, something like that. Other states are going to adopt this idea of using libraries as mental health centers or overdose prevention sites or whatever. Communities are going to lose sight of what libraries are supposed to be very quickly, because this is a disease and it's going to spread, and our culture is going to slide further into chaos. Here on the Conservative Cat Show, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. We stand for responsibility, tradition, and truth, and that means saying no. Libraries aren't hospitals. High schoolers shouldn't write laws, and enabling addiction is not compassion. Okay, so I'm going to hit on this. This is, again, an Illinois story, but I'm going to take a quick break. You smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We've got another bill. We are probably the most famous state for corruption, machine politics, backroom deals, and surprise, surprise, there is this new transparency measure out there. Oh, it's so wonderful. Transparency measure. Well, it's not about accountability at all. It's actually political theater. The legislature, again, Republicans, all of them pretty much, except for two, voted for House Bill 1447. Okay, and this actually requires state agencies to post monthly reports on how taxpayer dollars are invested. Sounds great. Sounds like a great win for transparency. On the surface, it sounds great. But we know that it's never the full truth. So we are going to come back, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'm going to take a quick break. Hey, hit that like button. Hit it right now. Subscribe to the channel. Do it. So this morning we're talking about the latest so-called transparency measure. And this is just really annoying. It's House Bill 1447, and the law, the now law, JB just signed it. It requires state agencies to post monthly reports on how taxpayer dollars are invested. Now, I know what you're thinking, Cats. What's so wrong with that? That sounds great. Yeah, it does. But we know Democrats in Springfield, the devil is in the details here, okay? And deception is the design. So State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer, a Republican, he nailed it. He said that this bill is more symbolism than substance. And he's absolutely right. Now, he is one of two Republicans who voted present, okay, in protest, saying that this wasn't about real transparency, that this was about theater, political theater. Okay, so here's the truth. the information is already available. Okay, so now they're saying that they're going to just publish it online monthly. Okay, now if you request this information via Freedom of Information Act request, this would be something they'd have to cough up in a week or two. Okay, the state agencies, if you asked, hey, what are your numbers for this last month? Where did you invest taxpayer dollars? They'd have to give that to you via Freedom of Information Act within a week or two. So House Bill 1447 doesn't unlock any sort of hidden vault of secret data. Okay, it doesn't expose corruption. It just forces bureaucrats kind of to do busy work by putting numbers into yet another government report, so Democrats can pat themselves on the back and believe that they're doing it in the name of accountability or whatever. That's not transparency, really. It's a press release. It's a photo op. So let me take you deeper, because this is where most journalists stop. They will print what the press release says, and they will quote the sponsor, bill sponsor, saying, "Oh, yay, transparency. This is a win for transparency." I'm not a journalist. I'm a watchdog, so I'm going to take it a bit deeper. What does mandatory reporting actually mean? It means more bureaucrats, more paperwork, more red tape. And David Meyer gave a perfect example of this: local school districts. Now, 20 years ago, administration in school districts was much leaner. Okay, we didn't have like 40 administrators in one school district. Okay, teachers taught, principals managed. That was about it. You might have had a superintendent. Now we've got superintendents, director of athletic director. We've got this director. We've got that director. So there's a director for everything in schools now. And school districts, they're kind of drowning in reporting mandates. Now, I am all about transparency, but this new law adds forms. They're going to have to fill out forms. People who work in these state agencies, they're going to have to stay in compliance. That means more hoops that they've kind of got to jump through. And this is a pile of paperwork. And when that pile of paperwork gets too high, they hire more people for the agency, okay, to keep up with the mandatory reporting requirements, okay? So what does that mean? They hire more administrators. They hire more people to the tune of six-figure salaries, okay? And that's fewer resources left for kids in classrooms. It's fewer resources for the Illinois residents, in the case here of the state agencies having to comply with the mandate. So now look at what has gone on with our schools. They're required to do all kinds of reports, mandated reports, and that requires a lot of forms. That requires a lot of compliance and a lot of paperwork. And they justify hiring all of these people to keep up with the mandates, the reporting mandates. So the same thing is happening at the state level. One new transparency report, which this is a new transparency mandate where you have to post online monthly what you're investing in. Okay, that might not break the budget because you might have to hire one person to do that. Okay, but a stack of transparency report mandates. Suddenly, departments need brand new staffs, entire new staffs to just turn out reports nobody really reads. Okay, so that's not accountability, it's bureaucracy, and that's government getting bigger. Okay, so that's government feeding itself instead of serving us. So, who really benefits from this bill? It's bloated bureaucracy, i.e., the Democrat machine. More state jobs, that means more union positions, that means more dues flowing back into the political machine, the union dues flowing back into the political machine. It is the oldest trick in Illinois politics. And again, I want to reiterate, every Republican, outside of two who voted present, every Republican voted for this. Okay, they pretend it's about good government, but they're going to use this bill to grow the payroll, okay? And they're going to quietly cash in the political loyalty here, okay? Oh, my buddy, he needs a job. Oh, well, here, he actually worked on my campaign not that long ago. He got me elected in my district. He needs a job now. Okay, I don't have space for him to work for me at the state house, but I need him to have a job because he worked hard for me and I want a political ally. What do I do as a legislator? I'm going to craft a bill that requires more bureaucracy, more red tape, more regulation, more reporting, and we're going to have to hire people in order to keep up with these reporting mandates. So then Timmy, who worked on my campaign for me, I'm going to reward him with a job here at the state agency that now requires that is now required to publicly post online what they're investing. Okay, so Democrats will brag about transparency. The actual culture of Illinois government has actually become less transparent than ever, despite having all of these transparency laws and mandates. Okay. David Meyer said it himself. He said under Governor J.B. Pritzker, transparency is at its lowest point in decades. So during COVID, when the governor, the tyrant, J.B., he governed via executive order, they were hiding data, they were avoiding questions, they were dodging accountability. Communication broke down and it never was really restored or recovered after that, after COVID. So today, even legislators, these are people elected by you. Okay, they are forced to file FOIA requests. Okay, because the state agencies are not giving them the answers they need. The governor's office is not giving them the answers they need. Imagine that. A lawmaker chosen by voters still have to jump through this hoop of FOIA to get basic information out of the governor's office. That's not transparency. That's stonewalling. These state agencies, if they wanted to, you wouldn't have to file FOIA. If you just asked and emailed, hey, do you have this information? Out of the kindness of their heart, they should be, and out of the spirit of transparency, they should be just giving that information over. So here's the irony. Pritzker, he makes taxpayers jump through hoops while he's sitting on billions from his family's fortune. And he's pretending to be a man of the people. Folks, he is not a man of the people. He's for power and he's for fake transparency. And this is one of his favorite weapons, is getting Democrats to craft bills like this and to say that he's the most transparent governor. And he signed legislation that would require state agencies to publish on their websites what they're investing in. So I want to contrast this because David Meyer, he actually said this flat out. He said Pat Quinn, Democrat, and Bruce Rauner, the Republican, both were far more transparent than Governor J.B. Pritzker. What does that mean? When legislators ask the office for information, they give it to him. Okay, because he's a legislator and out of the spirit of transparency, we're going to do this. And that's kind of saying something because these governors were by no means perfect. Okay, so compared to Pritzker, though, at least they communicated, at least when legislators asked, they provided numbers and information. They actually answered questions. And they didn't treat elected officials like pesky reporters to be ignored. Okay, it's different when there's a reporter sniffing around. You might give them the runaround if they're being pesky and if they're going to make you look bad. But these are legislators who are elected by the populace, and they should get the answers to their questions almost immediately, and they shouldn't be required to, or they shouldn't have to file FOIA requests. Okay, so Pritzker's party passes bills like 1447, House Bill 1447, and the press, media, they very dutifully, they call it a win for transparency. They reprint what the majority party says in their press releases. And I want you to remember what's really happening here. This isn't a win. It is a smokescreen. They are distracting you with shiny reports, while real decision, real deals, real corruption, it stays hidden behind closed doors in Springfield. Okay, so let me paint you a picture of how the bill works, actually, because I think that might help you understand 1447. So DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services, this is a state agency with a tragic record of failure. We just talked about how there's a state representative out there who's accusing them of hiring interns for not intern work, okay, for conducting investigations into parents and removing children from the home, which is not the role of an intern at DCFS, okay? So they have a tragic record of failure here in the state of Illinois. Under this bill, DCFS, say they moved like $10 million into a money market account for emergencies, and they want that to grow, and they're investing it for emergencies. And they post that online at the end of the month. It sounds great, but here's the problem. Posting a number online doesn't mean that the money is actually going to go where it's going to go. Okay, where they say it's going to go. Okay, just because you say the interns are not removing children from the homes and you're using this backwards sort of explanation that interns are, allowed to do this or are trained in some sort of way to do this, doesn't mean that you are being transparent, doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing, okay? Posting the number doesn't stop the waste, doesn't stop the fraud, doesn't stop the malfeasance in the agency. What does? Enforcement. So firing people. That's what needs to happen anytime DCFS does something that is bad or is considered a failure. Somebody needs to get fired for that. What would protect taxpayers is accountability with teeth. Penalties if you misuse funds. Penalties if you commit some sort of failure, fraud, or allow interns to remove children from home when they're not legally supposed to be doing that. Real consequences for fraud and for corruption. That is what we need. We need people fired. Okay. And Democrats, of course, don't want that. I told you already that having these bureaucrats or agencies bloated with all of these bureaucrats is good for the Democrats because that means unions, that means union dues funneled right back into the political machine. Bloating them itself is good for the Democrats because a lot of time, actually Democrats and Republicans, I'm going to stop with this whole, at this point, Illinois is a uniparty, okay? We have no Republicans. So Republicans, Democrats, they reward people who work on their campaigns with state jobs. And if they were serious about accountability, they'd be firing these people, not hiring these people. So again, this is a symbolic piece of legislation, symbolic reform. The symbols keep coming, but the corruption keeps growing. And I want to reiterate this. Again, this bill passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support. There are only 2 House members who voted present, while the rest in the Senate, everybody voted yes. In the House, pretty much everybody voted yes. Republicans felt pressured to go along, I guess, or they're part of the corruption. They like giving their jobs or giving jobs to their friends who work on their campaigns. They feel important when they do that. It strokes their ego. So what I would have done, voted no. Yes, absolutely not no, because this is fake and gay, to put it bluntly. This is a trap. Republicans, I urge you to read over these bills. Maybe the Republicans aren't reading over these bills. The naloxone one with the libraries, maybe they didn't read that one. Maybe they didn't read this one. I urge you to, 1, read them. 2, see it for the trap that it is. Democrats, when they define the terms, they weaponize the optics. Okay, they say, if you vote no, you hate good government. That's what the Democrats will say. This was Democrat-sponsored legislation. And too often, Republicans play along. C.D. Davidsmeyer, he had the courage to fight back. He had the courage to push back by voting present and sending a message. He was voting present and said that it was a kind of out of protest. He says, really what he's saying here is, I refuse to rubber stamp fake reform. And we need more Republicans like that. Those who have a backbone, more who will stand up and say, symbolism is enough. Your terms, your optics, it's all political theater, and I've had it. Reports, paperwork, it's not enough. Illinois needs real reform, and we need to start firing people who engage in things like fraud and corruption. So where does that leave us? We can accept the fake transparency, shiny reports with no accountability, red tape that grows government, and makes it really, really big and grows it to a big government that doesn't really serve the taxpayer. Or he could demand real transparency. That is our other option. Real enforcement, real consequences, and fire people who engage in the misuse of taxpayer funds or corruption in some sort of way. So, Illinois, we need real reform more than any other state. I really do think that in the nation. We desperately need transparency from the pension crisis to IDOC failures, the Illinois Department of Correction failures, the DCFS failures, the COVID cover-ups, awarding COVID unemployment, IDES, awarding unemployment when they shouldn't have been awarding unemployment, to the backroom budget games that they play, raising your taxes every single year when there's a budget deficit, not cutting spending. Illinois doesn't need more paperwork. They need truth. All right. So I do want to shift gears. We are going to be talking about Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann. I'm actually going to continue to do it right now. I'm not taking a break. Smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. And head on over to patriotpumpenergy.com. Support the program by buying your bottle of premium pre-workout today. It's good stuff. It's better than all those energy drinks out there that are loaded with caffeine, sugar, and food dyes. We have no artificial colors in the Patriot Pump formula. And this is a very carefully crafted supplement to ensure that your focus and your energy is long-lasting throughout the day. So Keith Olbermann, and this should be much bigger news than what it is. I feel like this should be out there for everybody to see. Should be like the top headline. Keith Olbermann, he threatened the life of Scott Jennings in a very extreme way. As so much so, an extreme way, saying that he's going to be next. Okay, now the FBI, I think, is going to get involved, I'd imagine. So this is a move that most people would call insane, especially considering the assassination of TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk just less than 2 weeks ago. Olbermann, he is ready to do anything but turn down the violent rhetoric. In fact, he told Scott Jennings that he is going to be next to die. Olbermann's original post has been deleted off of X, but not before we grabbed the screenshots. Okay, of course we grabbed the screenshots. Hell yeah. So we have the screenshots. Now, Scott Jennings, if you guys don't know who that is a CNN contributor. He's like the sole Republican or sole conservative voice on CNN. A lot of the times they have him on. And I want to share this with you. Here it is, the screenshot. I'm not lying. Okay, so he says, "You're next, MFer." That's what Olbermann wrote in a reply to Scott Jennings. Scott Jennings, though, is not playing around. He actually sent this screenshot to the FBI. He's not messing around with these radicals on the left. He actually sent the image of this post to the FBI. This has got to stop, folks. Conservatives, Christians, we are being gunned down. We lost a giant in our movement, Charlie Kirk, when Charlie Kirk's suspected killer was influenced heavily by leftist ideology, and he decided to end Charlie's life when all he was really doing was speaking to college students at this Utah Valley University in Utah. This has got to stop. It's starting to get way out of hand. And these vile leftists, what they did, they celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk, and they made up excuses to justify his killing. Oh, Charlie Kirk is for Second Amendment, which means he deserved it. He said that the Second Amendment unfortunately caused his death. Yes, it does, unfortunately, cause death. Like people having guns. I mean, but it's not really the guns, it's the people who kill the people. And I know it's easy for people to blame the guns because they don't want to face the fact that there's evil that exists in the world and that there's evil people who would go to the extreme of taking the life of somebody and shooting them in the neck based off a a radical ideology, a leftist ideology. His lover was trans. Okay. This is starting to get really creepily, like even in Colorado, there was a shooting actually that day, and this has not been talked about. Desmond Holly, I think is his name, the shooter, young kid, pictured with a lot of people at a Trump protest where he was holding up a sign that said, "If I had eggs, I'd throw them at Donald Trump, but the eggs are too expensive," or something. And then allegedly, he's got a family member who is transgender. I don't know if that was a motive behind the attack. We still don't know. That was very much covered up. The attack that followed like an hour after Charlie was assassinated. But we do know the Nashville shooting. There's been several other transgender shooters. Now you're starting to get people who are shooting people on behalf of perhaps their trans loved ones. Okay. The text messages reveal from Tyler Robinson, the alleged killer, that allegedly he did this out of the love for his transgender boyfriend. So, yeah, this is truly sickening. And what we saw here was not only leftists responding to the Kirk assassination by, being jubilant and celebrating, and they were justifying his killing by saying, "Oh, he was pro-Second Amendment, and that's why he died, because he was pro-Second Amendment." They came up with all kinds of nasty justifications for the killing. What we saw was most of the celebration was coming from professors at college campuses, K through 12 school teachers. The IEA, the Illinois Education Association, actually just came out with something, and I'll have to share this with you because it's crazy. But it was teachers largely, professors, and professionals in the health field, and Democrats, of course, like Ilhan Omar and AOC. What does that say about society, by the way, and where we're at as a society? We need to get these K through 12 teachers fired, and we need to replace them with Christians and conservatives, and we need to get these professionals in the health field, these radicals, out of these institutions that we rely on, education, health. We need to get them out of there and replace them with Christian conservative people, Christian nationalists, if you will, Christians who believe that this country was founded on and is a Judeo-Christian nation. So let me get to actually what the IEA responded to. A lot of people are trying to get teachers fired because of their jubilation, their celebration of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Here's what the IEA president said. The Illinois Education Association firmly believes that all educators have a right to speak on matters of public concern. Yes, you do have a right, but that doesn't mean that when you speak, you don't have consequences that follow your words. Okay. Nobody's trying to kill these people. Okay. Charlie Kirk was killed because he used words. Okay. He had a right to speak, and they took his life because he was speaking. Okay. Nobody's trying to kill these teachers for speaking or for celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We're just trying to get them fired and out of these institutions that we rely on, because we don't want to foster a culture of death and foster a culture of evil. Okay, so there are consequences when you speak out on matters of public concern. And nobody should die. I'm not saying that. Nobody should, like Charlie Kirk did, nobody should die. Nobody should be jailed or prosecuted for what they say. We are calling for them to be nixed from our institutions that we rely on. Here's what the IEA continues to say. Like all Americans, teachers, higher educators, and school support staff do not surrender their rights when they begin working at school, college, and universities. This fundamental principle is essential to the foundation of our public education system. Comments made by an educator on social media do not interfere with their professional responsibilities, compromise their ability to teach, or create a hostile environment for students. That is debatable. When you have and we'll get to Alex Williams here of Unit 5, he's the school board president. Okay, Alex Williams. He made some comments that could potentially create a hostile environment. And he should be fired, right? As a consequence to what he has said about Christian conservatives. And I'll get to his comments here in just a second. But the IEA goes on. They say their ability to teach or create, this doesn't compromise their ability to teach or create a hostile environment for students. Personal political expression outside of school hours on personal time is not punishable offense. It is a protected right and one that our students should know every American has. Okay. We are strongly urging all school district administrators and our school board members to recognize public schools should be a place of civic engagement, where civic engagement is encouraged, not punished, both for students and staff. Okay, so that's the IEA statement that I wanted to provide you guys. We will get to Alex Williams here and what he said. Let me pull that up. But in the meantime, I want to continue with Keith Olbermann here. Truly sick and disgusting what he said. He said, "You're next" to Scott Jennings. And on top of that, the leftist teachers, the health professionals, the professors who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk, they absolutely lost their minds over the late night host, Jimmy Kimmel, being indefinitely suspended by ABC, with many on the left equating that to losing Charlie Kirk. Okay. Now, why did Kimmel find himself in trouble? Because the executives at some of the largest ABC affiliates, you've got Sinclair and Nexstar, these are media conglomerates, they were disgusted by his comments surrounding the Kirk assassination because he lied. There's a difference between cable news and broadcast. Broadcast, they have FCC licenses, so therefore they are held to a higher standard. When relaying the news, they need to not lie. Okay. Now, during COVID, platforms like YouTube would deplatform you. They deplatformed me because I simply talked about ivermectin being a helpful resource for myself. I made that very clear in my show. I said that I took ivermectin and it helped me get over COVID. And because they said that, they knocked me off the platform. Very different than broadcasters. I don't hold an FCC license. This is a platform. I'm not a broadcaster. There's a big difference between the two because broadcasters are held to a higher standard. Now, he lied and blamed the assassination on the MAGA gang, right? Even after law enforcement had made it clear that the suspect was Tyler Robinson, and he was influenced by left ideology and by his trans-identifying male boyfriend, and those were motivating factors here in the assassination. Olbermann was one of those who left his mind over the Kimmel suspension, by the way. Keith Olbermann. And he had a really unhinged response that I want to get to here. Here we go. He says, Disney, Bob Iger, and ABC prostitute themselves for Donald Trump. Oh, boy. Kimmel off air for truth-telling about Charlie Kirk's hate speech, MAGA exploitation of his death. Kirk died because he lived in the violent madness of Trump's America. So here's Keith Olbermann, and I want to share this clip with you. And then I promise I'll get to Alex Williams. I haven't forgotten about his little post that I want to make known to you, but take a listen to Keith Olbermann.
With some certainty that if Tyler Robinson indeed shot Charlie Kirk, he shot him for personal reasons because he saw Kirk as a direct threat to somebody he loved. That Robinson was not a stochastic proxy murderer from Antifa or the Groypers or the right-wingers who had so recently called Kirk a fraud, like Laura Loomer. It is then also clear that there is truly only one person whose words created amplified, mainstreamed, and manufactured this nightmarish environment that has led to Charlie Kirk's death. The leading threat in this country, in this moment, to the safety and the lives of conservatives and Republicans and MAGA commentators and politicians and civilians is not George Soros, and it's not Antifa, and it's not a Democrat, nor a liberal, nor a socialist, nor an immigrant, nor a transgendered person. The leading threat in this country, in this moment, to the safety and the lives of conservatives and Republicans and MAGA is Donald Trump, the individual who's done the most to put the lives and welfare of all of us directly, and also by his perverted lead and demonic inspiration of others, is Donald Trump. The America in which Charlie Kirk was murdered, the America in which Melissa and Mark Hortman were murdered, the America in which Paul Pelosi was beaten, the America in which Donald Trump himself was shot, is Donald Trump's America. More of my commentary on that, and my thanks to Kash Patel for again relighting the Trumpstein fire yesterday on the all-new Thursday Countdown podcast.
Okay, so that's Keith Olbermann. Oh, what a loser. I can't handle this guy. Okay, so yeah, I mean, he went on a rant about Jimmy Kimmel being off air, and he says, oh, he was truth-telling. Wrong. He was lying, and like I had already said, broadcasters are held to a higher standard because they hold FCC licensure. And the law enforcement, prior to Kimmel getting on air, now he's going to be back on Tuesday, Jimmy Kimmel. Prior to him getting on air, the law enforcement had made it very clear that Tyler Robinson was a suspect, and that suspect was motivated by left-wing ideology and by his transgender boyfriend, by trans ideology, okay? This is even worse than what he just said there. I want to share this with you. This is his tweet. Keith Olbermann says, burn in hell, Sinclair, alongside Charlie Kirk. Wow. There it is. Oh, boy. Okay. So, leftists, they've got to stop it right now. If you didn't think we needed more faith in this country after Charlie Kirk's murder, what has happened since should have sealed that fact in stone. We need more faith. We need less evil in this country. And I mean, he's right. There is evil that exists. The Paul Pelosi, Melissa Hortman, those were not right-wing motivated attacks, by the way. Law enforcement has not come out and said that. But it's just wrong to state that Donald Trump is fostering violence, because Melissa Horton happened under, I believe, the Biden administration. Paul Pelosi, I believe, happened under the Biden administration. Let me double check on that. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. But I mean, violence happens all the time. Paul Pelosi, yeah, he was attacked in 2022. That was under the Biden administration. Pretty sure. Oh no, Melissa Hortman was, because that was on No King's Day. She was attacked under the Trump administration. But point is, these kinds of attacks happen because there's evil that exists in the world, and there's one party legitimizing evil. And I would say that that's the left party. I don't even know. It's just the mainstream media and Democrat politicians are legitimizing this evil. Okay, so Jimmy Kimmel, he has headed back on air. If you guys didn't hear about that, after being suspended briefly for lying about who murdered Charlie Kirk, the late night host will return Tuesday night. So that's tonight. Yeah, tonight, marking a victory really for the far leftist. I do want to get to this Alex Williams bit. Alex Williams is the Bloomington, or the Unit 5 school board president, and he has insulted a vast majority of the student body and their families. And as a public leader, you should not resort to such tactics. This post distorts, this is what the McLean County Republican Party says, this post distorts, mischaracterizes, and lies about conservative Americans across the nation. Mr. Williams needs to publicly apologize to the families of Unit 5 and to conservative voters across the country. There is a petition out there right now. Actually, I want to double check, see how many signatures it's got, because it's gotten quite a few, within the almost 400 signatures within the last few days. So 400 signatures, 400 people are saying, and I don't know what his vote totals were, but I would imagine, I mean, getting somebody, now he works at Country Financial, you might have a better chance at contacting his employer and getting him fired there for these comments than getting him to resign from his position as school board president for Unit 5. But here is what the post says. Alex Williams, this is the point, the post of controversy. So the point of controversy, he says, sadly, there are still too many believers. Here's a list that run rampant in our society, of things that run rampant in our society. Number 1, low information voters. For example, those who only source information from Fox News. 2, Christians who claim they love God, a God they've never seen, yet hate their neighbors whom they see daily. Okay, now this isn't like a Christian. He's blanket calling Christians hateful towards their neighbors. Okay, and he's making fun of them for believing in a God they haven't seen. Okay, this is what he's doing in this post. And Christians, I mean, this is a huge portion of not only his student body, but I'd imagine Unit 5 staff, faculty. Okay, and he says, another thing that runs rampant in our society, number 3, institutional racism, woven into the fabric of the American dream. Number 4, denial that institutional racism exists, or if it did, there's no disproportionate impact to marginalized communities. Number 5, lack of basic human decency and respect. Let's do better, America. And then he posted something about Donald Trump, MAGA cult believing, what the MAGA cult believes, I don't know. I think it was like a video or something. So Alex Williams, the main thing that I take issue with here is calling Christians hateful, broadly calling Christians hateful. That is not only a mischaracterization, it's a flat out lie. And honestly, that could probably be disproven by all kinds of facts and figures. Christians have led all kinds of efforts to help people. I mean, most of our hospitals were created under the Catholic Church, you know, St. Joe's, St. Mary's, you know. I mean, there's a reason why the hospitals are OSF healthcare. This is a faith-based hospital saving lives of people every single day. Christians have been instrumental in benefiting society and helping society. And it's just, I mean, Home Sweet Home Ministries, I think it is. Pretty sure that is a faith-based organization, a Christian organization. They, in Bloomington, are helping homeless people. Home Sweet Home Ministries. Let me double check. Yeah, it's a faith-based organization. So like a Christian organization. Okay, so I mean, to come out and say that they're hateful and that they hate their neighbors, just blanket statement, is just disgusting. And he should resign his position as a school board member and president, because he has offended and really lied. I would say more so just for lying, not just outside of the offense, but it's lying about Christians and spewing out hate. He should be fired. And that's not the same thing as free speech, by the way. IEA is going to say they're entitled to free speech, and that's their right. Your job is not your right. Okay, it's a privilege that you get to work as a Unit 5 school president. It's a privilege that you get to work at Country Financial. You're not entitled to those things, and there are consequences to saying things, okay? For example, if I go and say something of a harassing nature to a colleague or coworker. Maybe doesn't reach that level of harassment, but I say something that is, off color or doesn't reach that level of harassment, but my colleague was offended by it. My boss can make the decision, hey, we're going to fire you. Now you are completely protected as far as your First Amendment right. You can't be in prison for saying things like that or killed for saying things like that. You shouldn't be killed for saying things. But you most definitely can get fired and your rights are still preserved. That's just a consequence to speaking. So not calling for Alex Williams to be jailed in any kind of way for saying these things about Christians. He has the right to say them, but he doesn't have the right to serve in a school board president capacity or have the right to work at Country Financial, because now his employer, should look at that and say, hey, is he going to, treat customers fairly? Is he going to treat the student body fairly? Or is he going to have a bias towards Christians and conservatives? And as an employer, you should be able to fire him because that's your right. And it's a privilege to be in a job. Anyway, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I think that's going to do it for us today. Tomorrow, I'll be back bright and early. Be sure to be here bright and early, 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. I've been starting a little later, like 6:15, 6:20 about. So be here and subscribe and share this out with a friend. You can also find the podcast version of the show anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast. You guys have a blessed morning. Bye-bye. Love you.